there's a major problem with our youth. And the reason being is the structure and foundation that we're laying as parents.
Welcome to another episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say I'm here with Lauren Majors. Already we've been speaking a bit before we came on, and I'm feeling the vibe, very high energy. I can't wait to get into this conversation. So Lauren is the co-founder or originator of the Happy Life System. With her husband, she's built a Fortune or an Inc. 5000 media company. She got a full ride sports scholarship in the US to D1, which I learned is that it's a top level division for soccer within the States, which is a huge achievement. And she scored that when she was 16 years old. She's also got a new book coming out called Crack the Parenting Code. So Lauren, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to Being Human.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And for all listeners, I just want to say, thank you for listening to this message, and Richard for holding space for people on this journey. We're all growing and evolving every single day. And so it's so amazing to have people like yourself that are holding space for these stories to come forward and messages to come forward to support each other. Because life sometimes is not that easy. We all need each other.
We do. We do, Lauren. So like with all my guests, before we get into all the amazing content you're putting out there and your main message, I'd love for people to understand some of your background. So if you could take us back to, where you grew up, what your mum and dad were like, what were the early years like for you, Lauren?
Yes. So California, born and raised, Orange County, California. And for all of you out there that have seen the TV show Laguna Beach, that reality TV show, right? I just lived about 10 miles outside of Laguna Beach. And to be very transparent, the area in which I lived was very pretentious, right? Everything was external, very much about the external, what you did, what you achieved, what car you drove. So as a little girl, I grew up in this type of construct. And I had a relationship with my parents. My father's Argentinian, my mother's born in America. And our family dynamics were very unique. They were doing the very best that they could to raise 3 girls, but I was always the rebellious child. So I was the middle child that was always bumping up against, I don't think that's the way to parent. How do you put soap in your child's mouth? How do you spank your child? How do you lock them in a room? How do you do all these things? And so I was always rebelling against the status quo, but on the outside, everything looked amazing, So
but sorry, you actually had soap put in your mouth and you were locked in.
Oh, yes. So this is, and we talked about this too, is a lot of the underbelly of children development is really coming from the lack of something within the child. So if a child is coming forward and saying, I hate you, or all of these things, there's deeper work as a parent that you need to assess and why there's not harmony within the relationship with you and your child. What is the wedge? So for me, when I lashed out, I got soap in the mouth, literally, a bar of Dove soap, and I had to swallow it. And so to me, I would think Child Protective Services would pick up, a parent for doing that, but back in those days, it was kind of normal, belting kids, spanking kids, grounding, because the old traditional parenting tactics. And that's why the Happy Life System is my life purpose, because going through all of those hardships as a child was the greatest teacher, and why I could show up and be the role model that I am today. I mean, I am so grateful for the lessons with compassion and grace. It was one of the hardest journeys as a child, and not to get into the intricacies of my childhood, but family dynamic relationship between mother and father, very volatile. And, they were doing the best they could to get by. So fast forward is, 16 years old playing soccer. Soccer was my outlet. And coming from an Argentinian family, any of those Argentinian or Italian listeners out there, soccer is their life. So I started playing when I was 4 years old, all the way into my teenage years. And I, won multiple CIF championships, which are the biggest, championships that you win in high school. And then I went to a D1 college full ride scholarship. But in the interim of these periods, Richard, I had so much trauma. And in reality, on paper, I looked great. I had all the newspaper articles, but deep down inside that little Lauren, there was multiple holes within my heart, my mindset, my soul set. And I was searching for things externally to fulfill that, right? So whether it was seeking external approval, whether my coach is liking me, all of these things. So I'm giving you the clip notes. So I fast forward, I go to U of A, University of Arizona, scholarship, do the whole thing. And after 4 years, I've now reached my peak. So I'm done. And I've always been like an entrepreneur, independent ever since I was 4 years old, like selling lemonade on the side of the street to try to create money and abundance for myself. So like business was my thing. I just didn't know which avenue, nor was I guided with living principles, right? So I'm like, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to Las Vegas. Like, I'm out of here. I'm moving out. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. Because I literally felt like a bird that was caged on multiple levels. So it was almost like a positioning where a child, has these parents and role models around them where the people are living vicariously through the child to perform. Right. And so I never really got to access my real gifts because I was always, doing things that everybody else told me. And that's where I lost myself. So where's a better place? Go to Las Vegas, right? Go to nightclubs and escape reality.
Yeah.
And so that was when I was about 20, 21. But my childhood, was challenging, and I give a lot of grace and gratitude to the people that raised me. But being a mother now today, I wanted to reinvent the paradigm of what parenting and family is and raise conscious, empowered human beings that have a relationship with their parents in a loving, dynamic, beautiful way. So fast forward, Vegas. And I got a call from a friend, and she's like, "Hey, Lauren, you gotta, take this job interview." And it's with CBS. And in America, CBS is Channel 2. And I'm like, "What do they do?" "Oh, they sell billboards." I'm like, "You mean billboards like in like Times Square, Sunset, Piccadilly in the UK?" Yeah. I'm like, "Okay, I got this." So I go in, being an athlete and whatever, it was all about rank in my life. Everything was like, you got to be number one, be number one. If you were number two, you were a failure. Like, this was the program that was running my life. So when I went in for this job interview, ended up getting the job over the course of the year, became the number one salesperson. And I was literally like, there's 40 people. If anybody's seen the show Mad Men, it is no way to live on every level. Like, the amount of stress, the amount of, hostility, animosity, and jealousy in that type of environment. I think culturally, these corporate companies, they want that, so people are fighting. And it's the same thing in soccer. It's the same thing in sport. You might think someone's your friend, but they're trying to take your position, so you always got to watch your back. So I found myself in the same scenario just in my career, which was different, from soccer. Yeah. So ended up being number one, and then had this epiphany, like, wait a second, I'm billing multi-million-dollar deals. I could do this on my own. Why wouldn't I just start my own company? All I got to do is get a credit line, right? Build the infrastructure of this business and do it on my own. So I had that epiphany. And within that epiphany, I got a call from a coworker, and my sales manager at the time, he's an ex-professional tennis player. We both really aligned on sports. And he was my best friend. Like, we really connected in the sales world. They're like the only one in the company. And she said, Brad's wife had passed away, and he had 2 boys that were 4 and 6. And in that moment, I don't know if anybody listening to this or you've had these experiences where it's kind of like a deja vu experience where you're like, I feel like he's going to be okay. Like, there was just something spiritual that happened within me that I was like, I know he's going to be okay. And in that moment, I never knew what the story was or where I was going to go, but I knew that I was going to be his friend and help him along this journey. So fast forward a year and a half, I'm making dinner. This is a man that was very corporate America, coming from Los Angeles, managing a $200 million budget, billboards only for, CBS.
Right.
So, it was the traditional man make money, woman stay home type of situation. Yeah. So his whole world's turned upside down. And I was supporting him. So after a year and a half, I decided, I had multiple friends that were like, Lauren, you cannot, like, this is a man that's 16 years older, than you. He has 2 kids. If you are going to engage with someone, you need to make a commitment. And at the time, my family was like, no way, you're never going to be with this guy. I did the complete opposite, being the renegade that I am as, the little girl. Yeah. I bet on it. And we ended up in a relationship. It was a year and a half of friendship. And so here I am, 23 years old, and I adopted his 2 boys, 4 and 6 years old. Okay.
Wow.
So he's 38. And so I'm like on my hands and knees going, okay, how do I do this parenting thing? Because I know everything I was taught, I want to do the complete opposite. But I'm literally like looking everywhere, Richard. Where is the system? Like, where is the system to raise a conscious, empowered human that has character and has these different pillars of their life and can master their life so they don't have to go through the trauma that I went through? Where's the language? And I'm literally on like looking podcasts and books all over the world. I'm like, where's the everyday system? Like, I know that there's a chore chart, but where is the everyday system? So I'm starting to manifest this idea in my mind that if the system's not out there, I'm going to create the system. And in the meantime, me and Brad, we both left corporate America and we started our media company, and literally off the hustle. To this day, we're the third largest independent company in America that specializes in media. And we never took the carrot.
So let's clear in mind. So all in the same span, you leave your job, you start a business with him, and you take on his two children, right?
Yes.
Like all in the space of what, a year or something?
All of it. So it was literally like, if you want to talk about a 360 on a life, like my whole life was turned upside down and I was going in a complete new direction. And to be honest with you, I know a lot of the listeners on this show, when we talk about trauma, like I was actually running away from a lot of the pain and a lot of the things that I didn't want to deal with. So what's better than to be a workaholic and create a company?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I'm hiding, building business. I'm one of the top media executives in my industry. I'm crushing deals. I'm doing amazing, but I'm also not being mindful of really what's going on inside of me, which is, I'll deal with that later. Right.
Right. Oh,
so
but you had some inkling that there was something there, but you were
100%. Like right. I knew because I was so tightly wound on this perfectionism, of like, if I don't do this and I don't make 100, I would not leave the office until I made 100 cold calls a day. Like I was a psycho, because I knew the pipeline, Dale Carnegie. I've read every book on sales and you got to fill the pipeline. So it's like this whole program was playing in my mind while raising these two kids. So I've got two kids. Fast forward a year later, I'm pregnant. I have another baby. A year later, I have another baby. So I now have 4 kids and I'm 26 years old running a media company.
I was like, okay. Where's my next beer coming from? When I was 26.
Yeah, exactly. No, mind you, I was just in Vegas 4 years ago, right? I was like, wait, what? So that's kind of what led me to this conversation with you today, is having 4 kids, 26 years old, being in media, corporate company, scaling from the ground up with my husband. I need a system. I need a system to raise these humans. And that's what sparked this whole manifestation in my life. So it's like literally woke me up in a dream, 200 pages of IP. I wrote the entire thing out, my book. I've got 8 pillars, 150 skills and habits, and it's all gamified. And it was literally downloaded to me.
One sitting.
Literally, I wrote it out. I am one of the most disciplined, dedicated people you're ever going to meet. Once I'm on something, my kids are like, Mom, get up. You will not even get water. I go 9 hours, right? So it's like one sitting and it kept on coming through me.
So this is just pure channeling your intuition. Just
pure channeling. Everything was home. What did I need in my home as a little girl? Oh, the mastery of your space. We're using the word chores. Okay, I'm going to do a deep dive on that. What does chores actually mean? Chores means a mundane but necessary task. Mundane means finding no joy. So we're perpetuating humans into motivating them to do things in their life with the lower vibrational language. No wonder why there's so much resistance. The language. And then it just kept on stacking. And that's where I built all my pillars and all these skills. And it's so extensive, but it was the greatest gift and blessing to my life. And I started to put it into play. It was like a mad scientist, in her laboratory with all 4 of these little humans, putting it into play every single day. And I literally run into the kitchen and be like, oh my God, it's working. They're mastering their space. They're making their bed in joy because of the way that I framed it and the language that they have behind the why. Why are they doing the things that they do in their life? And how does it bring benefit into their life? That's what I was teaching.
Right. Wow.
So what is it? It's 5 years ago, my company was at its highest peak. And, we work with clients from Gucci to YSL to Hermes, to biggest clients in the world. And this was all clients I landed off of a cold call, like cold calling clients. And they're with the biggest, agencies in the world. So I always had to figure out what was extraordinary. How could I get to these people and create an extraordinary proposition for them to want to engage with me? So I landed these clients. And about 5 years ago, as crazy as I am, I call human resources and my husband, he's my business partner. He had no idea. And I literally said, I quit. I said, I'm resigning. I quit. I don't want to do this business anymore. And I said, I want to bring the Happy Life system to the world. And so here I am today, 5 years in the incubator, creating the system, my academy, my books, the app, everything. It's been one of the hardest things in my entire life, but I know that there is a divine purpose.
And what was the trigger for you quitting then? Was that like another moment in the middle of the night? Like what happened?
That was it was honestly on a soul level. Like it was, as a mother, I wanted to show up and be the authentic mother. And I had so many masks I was wearing. I did everything for everybody else, but I wasn't taking care of myself. And I knew if I don't slow down, I'm going to burn out. And not only going to burn out, I'm going to suffer. And it was almost an intuitional moment within my life where I was like, I've been grinding now, for 8 years, being married to Brad, building the company, and then raising 4 kids. Like I have to literally take care of myself and go on a spiritual journey myself to get to know really who I am and how to align and be at peace in life. Because, people always, when they interview me, they go, Lauren, what is happiness to you? And I go, happiness is the ability to be alone and to be peaceful while you're alone. And I'm telling you right now, I had no peace.
Right.
Constantly, my mind, what do I need to do? What do I need to go? Blah, blah, blah. I got to do that. Like I had no peace and harmony in my life. And so I'm like, this is not happiness. I've got everything on paper, right? I built the company, but I'm not actually like living my truth. And I'm not actually a happy person. I'm faking it. And if I don't get in touch with myself, the inner being, the essence of who I am, I could be setting myself up for a lot of challenges down the road.
Right. But by this point, you'd had this epiphany, you'd written the system down, you were using the system, but still something inside you weren't happy.
The system was my purpose. Like that's when I started to find like, oh my God, I love kids. Like I'm obsessed with kids.
Right.
And I love family. Like people say to me today, they're like the Cleopatra, the Joan of Arc of like children. Like I am that person. Like, and I think it's honestly because I had such a dysfunctional family. And I realized that all of those lessons are really what helped me elevate myself as a mother. I realized what I needed. And that's where I found the greatest joy. So even at the media company, I'd put on a new mask.
Right.
When I walked in, it's like, I have my assistants, I have all of these things, but I just wanted to like play with my kids and really enjoy my life in a way where I could define their path, where they could bring their life purpose and gifts to the world and be of service to humanity. What a concept. That to me was the greatest responsibility I could give to this planet.
Right. And it was when you really connected to that purpose, you were like, I can't do this stuff anymore. I can't be the executive.
Yeah. And also like, to be very honest, I know that a lot of our audience is, a lot of corporate and, entrepreneurial and stuff. It's a very challenging road because I love big business. Like I am a big business builder and it was an adrenaline rush for me. Like I loved that whole aspect. But then what I realized is within that, I had to play a role.
Yeah.
And so now fast forward, Happy Life System, I'm bringing it to the world in a way where it's a big business, but I also get to live out my life purpose, which is to be in service to others and to pass on my wisdom and share my gifts. Working with clients at the top of my game, I was a slave to these people.
Right.
An absolute slave.
Yeah.
And it was like I'm working 20-hour days and all of these things. And the minute that I dropped the ball, I'm fired. Right. So it was a different type of tension and energy within the media world that I was experiencing that I knew was going to burn me out and exhaust me.
Right. And you got that intuition ahead of time. Because a lot of the stories, and we've had them on the podcast, is people go much further, right? They end up at a rock bottom or a burnout. And certainly I did before I kind of made changes to my life. But it sounds like you had an intuition before you got to that place.
I'm like one of those people that when I master something, I will literally start all over again. And so that's really what happened in media. Like, as hard as it was to, cold call Burberry and land $5 million of billboard contracts outside of their agency, I did it, right? Like, those types of deals I did. So at that point, it was almost like I was at the peak of my game. I wanted to reinvent myself. I wanted to do something new. Like, it's not for ego, it was more about, am I fulfilled as an individual, and really asking myself that question, like, do you really like what you're doing right now? And the answer after 7 years was, I built it. It was great. I don't want to do this anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so then you started bringing the happy life system, which I've read through the 8 principles. And I know you really want to get into Crack the Parenting Code, which is where you get into working on yourself. But maybe it's worth touching on, the core aspects of the happy life system before we talk about crack the parenting code.
Yeah. So the Crack the Parenting Code is like the first step into my happy life system. So it's like, I rewind 13 years ago when I started, when I became, my son's now 22 years old.
Okay.
22, 20, 13, and 11. I have taken a child from a very hard tragedy and moved them through the consciousness to be able to go off into the world and be an adaptable human being that has conscious pillars. And so it was really them that came to me and was like, Mom, you have to share this with the world. Like, we cannot keep this for our family. And so my biggest thing was, like we all do, is reflecting on what did I need as a child to be a happy, healthy individual. So all of my pillars are literally me looking at it going, okay, home, the master of your space. If you can't master your space, you can't master your life. It's as simple as that. And I believe in that. If you can't master your mind, you can't master your life. You might be able to for a short time. So it was like all these pillars were mastering your space, master your health, right? The mind pillar, master your thinking, courage, master your power. And my whole thing is a human has to go through the experience for it to be embedded in their neurological system. You cannot tell a child to go and be courageous without them going through the experience.
Right.
So then I went back and I went, oh my God. So I'm going to create 25 skills and habits within this particular pillar. And I'm going to give the child the what, how, and the why. What is it? Let's say it's looking someone in the eye. How do you do that? You do it this way. Why do you do that? So when you give a human the why, you give them control of the experience, and it creates a reward loop, and they want to go back to that experience because they understand the deeper meaning.
Right.
So this is when the system was like, oh my gosh, responsibility, the mastery of self. Like, I was a soccer player. I had all my roommates and all my friends, their parents were, making their water jug or getting their bags ready all they needed to do was just show up and play the game. And I was like, that doesn't empower the individual to be in control of their life. It's a very one-dimensional way of living. So the happy life system was really founded on the pillars and the language. And so my whole thing is for a child to master themselves while mastering the relationships within a family network. And I teach that. And so that's where the gamification comes from, because I said, like, okay, you have to do the skills, habits, and responsibilities, but why can't we up-level this into a play state? When you're in a play state, you learn 3 times faster. So I gamified our entire life. So, inside the home, they're running around. I call them opportunities. It's not chores. And so the whole platform is built on the premise of everything's an opportunity for you to advance yourself. And with your own free will, the energy you put in creates an output in your life, the law of cause and effect. So when I created this whole thing, I was like, we can gamify in our, within our family, but we can also gamify in real time out in the world. So when we would leave and our kids would want to go to, a restaurant, I'm like, okay, if I show up to a restaurant and I pay for their meal, what am I teaching them? There needs to be some sort of contribution from their end to know that they're sitting at the table with us, and that bill might be $300. So, you're talking to somebody that hired assistants, valedictorians out of the biggest universities in the world, Ivy League. They got great grades and they got the full ride scholarship, but they didn't know how to mail a letter, right? They didn't have the life skills because all they did was one-dimensional things, and that's all they were taught to do. So my whole thing was life skills, to give a child the life skills and the framework. So if we go to a restaurant, what can you do in real time right now in the world that are within these pillars? For example, kindness. Maybe you can open the door for somebody, and I want to honor you with that. You're contributing to this energetic field that we're all creating.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So this is fascinating, but it was all founded on your own experience as a child and figuring out what you did.
And I was on a quest, Richard. I went from, I'm not sure if you've heard of the book, I'm sure, The Secret.
Yeah.
That was gifted to me. And I literally opened it up. I'll never forget. I was 21 years old at page 55. And I looked down and I'm like, oh my God, there's living principles that run we're energy. And then I start reading Buddha, what you think you become, what you imagine you create, what you feel you attract. I'm like, what? At 21 years old, I was mind blown that there was this type of consciousness in the human, population, but none of this is taught in school.
Right.
And then that's when I went on this spiritual, enlightenment quest from, Confucius to the Bhagavad Gita to Yogananda to Martin Luther King. I mean, anybody and everybody that had something to say, I wanted to understand what they're saying and how to live. And that was a lot of the path that I was yearning for as a child.
Right.
I wanted a path. Give me the discipline. Give me the structure. Show me, So my children now know choices and consequences. You are energy. You create the outcomes in your life. If you want that reality, make those choices, But for me, it was kind of left out in this big world, figure it out.
Right. Right. And then ending up driving towards external validation, not really knowing who you are.
All of that and making really bad choices along the way, right? I always talk about this, and this is in my book. I've had 9 lives. The partying, all of that is I was taught these things as a young girl, party at 16, get a fake ID, all of this stuff. And I was always such an old soul where I was always questioning things this can't honestly be why I'm here. There has to be more to this thing. And unfortunately, in the United States where I grew up, it's a capitalistic society. There is no foundational truths that run through the very fabric of our human essence. I believe people could, reject me on that claim, but I am a young girl in this capitalistic society. So what do? The way you look, how much money you have. It's who you date. It's what car you drive. It's all of these types of things. And so as a young girl, I was always questioning, there's no way that you make money, you work, you make money and you die. There's no way. And that's literally when I started having these aha moments. And I'm one of those people that will literally go to the ends of the earth to find the answers. And so when I talk about studying, I went all the way back to Socrates, when humans existed. And that's why a lot of my system is built on tribal principles. It's all about unification. We've been so disconnected with the digital age, and, parents go to work and kids go here. There's a dysfunction that is running rampant in our world right now. Right. And if you look at all tribal, you're 2 years old to 85, they all have a role. And humans want a sense of belonging. Where the disconnect is where we're off on our own little tangents and there's no unification within the tribe, right? That sets the foundation for us to move forward. What are our values as a family? What are our family mottos? How do we treat each other? How do we love? In my system, I literally have an operating agreement. It's like a family operating agreement, as if a company would have an operating agreement, because teamwork, you need a manual, everybody to work together. So that's taking the business aspect, translating that into my home, and then putting it into a play state with all these skills and habits. That's a lot of the crossover for me with the Happy Life system.
Yeah, because I think, and it's important you mentioned play state, because I can imagine some people listening to this thinking, oh God, that sounds like almost like oppressive, right? I've got to live under this system with these, but you're not saying that at all. And having read a book, of course, I kind of appreciate it. It's about gamifying. It's about just filling life with joy, right?
Well, and the most advanced CEOs right now are using gamification. And the reason why is because when people are in a play state, it's a different type of learning experience. So when people are learning under this, like, this, you have to do this and you whatever, sure, it's very fear-based, right? But if we want to find joy and we want to be happy individuals, how can we learn and embody these skills in a playful experience in our lives, whether we're adults? I'm like, just because I had kids doesn't mean I lose the essence of who I am. I'm a human that loves to have fun as well and learn and grow and master my life. So my whole thing was like, I have to teach these kids, but I want to do it in a fun way where everyone's embodying these skills and really not even knowing they're embodying these skills because they're in play.
Right. And so one thing I'm curious now about is how your kids responded to this. Was this like just a gradual transition, or did they feel a shift as you started to employ the system? How did it go for them?
Yeah. So I am like one of the biggest people on systems. And, in the dictionary, a system is, a set of beliefs in an organization or, a specific outcome. I don't believe that we can function without systems. And the reason why I say that is because I see mediocrity and chaos creep in at the highest level and people don't know their true north. That's in a company, that's on a sports team. If you look at some of the best sports teams in the world, they have a system, So with my kids, the foundation that I laid with them was, this is our system, right? Should you want to create abundance within the system, this is how we do this. Monetary, if you like that, non-monetary. So I call, the outcome for what they do. For example, the skills and the habits, they have their boards. And once they accomplish that, they cross it off. Now they cross it off. They don't just get money. I call it celebration point. When they have X amount of celebration points, they can use those celebration points in a way that the outcome is created in their life. So originally it was my two sons, the ones that I adopted. And I'm like, remember, I'm like a scientist, like working on this, pioneering this new way. So my one son is like, I'm in, yes. And the whole thing is like, 30 days, 60 days, you 2x your points. So you go to the next level, exactly like a real video game. And he's freaking out. He's like, okay, I want to use my points. And my biggest thing was the non-monetary and the monetary was something that I wanted to mix into our home. So things are great, but what about going to the movies, right? What about going bowling with your friends? What about all of those things? You can use your points for those outcomes in your life. So he's all over it. He's like, this is the most amazing thing. He's so energized. My other one is resistant. So he was a little bit like me in the beginning, like, like as a child, where I was like, what? No. He's like, I don't need to do that. I'm like, great. This is a good test for me. Like, how am I going to, create a platform for him to showcase that either he's got to move into action or whatever. So I told him, I said, that's your decision. The whole thing was free will. It's your decision. But should we go to the sports store? Should you want a ball? You'd have to have some sort of abundance to play for that.
Right.
Anybody listening, I'm going to tell you right now, humans are creatures of habit. When they start to notice certain things in their environment, it might be a week, it might be 2 days, it might be 2 months. After a month, he came to me. He could see the energy and the confidence and the self-belief that Nathan was feeling in his life, because what child doesn't want to create, a sense of belonging and confidence and empower themselves? So he's seeing Nathan like light up, doing all of his opportunities, all of these habits. He comes to me a month later and he goes, Mom, I want my own board. And in that moment, I realized I didn't force him. I showed him through experience. We went to the sports store. He couldn't get the ball. He had no abundance to get the ball. He had no celebration points to get the ball. I believe that if we buy our kids things, we're inhibiting them from understanding the value of things. They have to understand the value. So then they go off into the world and they're not entitled. They know they got to work towards things. My daughter was just on a podcast. She's 13 years old. And the first thing she said was, my parents' wealth is not my wealth. I have to take the stairs. And it was one of the most riveting things I'd ever heard, because she knows we're not just going to hand things out because she knows the outcome that would create in her life. She goes, I want to build my own wealth. She sees that from an inner strength. So with the foundation, with the Ryan who was resistant, and then he came in, he started building his life. So it was more about, hey, we're all doing this. You could be a part of this or you don't have to be a part of this, but I'm just going to let you know, should you want to do these things, you have to create some sort of energy input. Right. There has to be an exchange and a contribution. And, to this day, they're now 20 and 22. And and it's not on me because I'm just the guide. I always say, like, I'm the life coach and I'm in this human experience just as much as you are. Like, please don't call me mom. I don't want a label. I don't want a title. Like, I'm doing this thing and I might get it right sometime. But I can tell you right now, my husband and I have our own happy life system because we're mastering our lives alongside of our children. And really what this is about to me is mastering happy living. You can't tell your child to be positive if you are not a positive person showing up every day, putting in the work and dedicating and committing yourself to having a strong mindset. It's like we wake up in the morning, we're traveling, I shared with you. Guess what? Before we leave our room, they master their space. Our whole family, we're doing our gratitude journals together. We say 3 things we're grateful for. We take our remedies. We do our green juice. It's a way of living. So we have a strong, solid foundation and a framework for our family. And that's what's liberated all of us. And now my boys are 20 and 22. They've taken these living principles and they use them in their homes.
Right.
So it's
and
like...
and as you're speaking, I'm like immediately feeling like pangs of guilt because my kids are like 7 and I just go and buy them shit, right? Like there are not on any systems. There's no celebrations. Like I do my stuff, like I do my gratitude journal and I barefoot walk and I do my exercise and I do like a bunch of habits, right? That I believe contribute to my well-being and keep me strong and healthy and all the rest of it. But I don't think about like applying any of that to my kids, like other than being a good example for them and like, but like beyond that, it doesn't even strike me that I should have like a family system or I should worry about it for them. So I'm just being like full disclosure.
No, this is really good. I'm
curious, like when would you be starting them? Like, yeah.
Like I started with that, my story now, but like they were 4 and 6. And then I started my little ones when they were 3. I guess the biggest thing for me, Richard, is I was that entitled kid, right?
Right.
I was that kid that was given the balls. I was that kid that was like, you score 3 goals, I'll give you $100. It left me 0 respect, 0 honor, right? I didn't care. It was like, give me the shoes because I want the shoes. So when I had my own children, my biggest thing was like, I want them to understand the value. It's not about giving my kids things. It's about teaching them values. And when I gave them the values, that was the framework for them to be able to empower themselves. So sure, the ball is temporary. I just did a whole blog on this with my team. You can get your child the ball all you want, but it's temporary happiness. At some point, that ball won't have the same energy that it did when it left the store.
Right.
So this overconsumption that we're doing as parents, I feel is actually inhibiting, because I was that kid, a child from true, authentic connection to themselves and to, their relationship with their father or their mother. For example, for you, like a system, right? As simple as this. And I'm giving the viewers, like, this is what I did, is I came home and we all sat down. We had a family meeting and we said, hey, listen, you all are at the age right now where you are my role model. You inspire me. You are capable individuals. Let's put together a framework together where you're creating your own wealth. It's all in the way you say it. It's not like you need to do this now. So my kids are 3. I go, how do you want to contribute to our home? They're like, I want to water the plants. I want to do the dishes. It became this experience where they felt empowered and they were becoming leaders within their home, that then I felt as a parent that they were into the experience to where I could buy them the ball, right? Or I could do whatever I wanted to do for them, or whatever they wanted. But value was my biggest thing, is because I was that kid. If I said, I want this now, and I throw a tantrum in the store, parents get exhausted and they just give it to their kid. And then what does that teach the child?
Right. And you had that.
I was that person. I was that child. So,
but yet you still turned out like to have value for money and be a big contributor and so on and so on. So how was that a problem for you in that respect?
I think the biggest problem, I would say, I'm self-taught. Every single thing I taught myself. So the relationship, I haven't spoken to my family for 10 years.
Okay.
The relationship that I had with myself was 0 on a scale of, 1 to, I didn't know who I was because everything around me was being either done for me, told to me how to do it or this and that. So I wanted more in my life. I wanted to have like I said, happiness to me is about going through the journey, but it's also knowing who you are. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what this life was about. I didn't understand anything. And I realized I had so much trauma. Even though you say, like I got through it and I'm, in business or whatever, I was going to make anything work, anything.
Right.
But I compromised so much of my well-being. And I believe the value is being a stable, conscious, empowered individual that is not persuaded by the external world.
Okay.
That was what I was persuaded by multiple times, And so my relationship with my family, the dynamics of that type of parenting style is very unconscious to me. And the reason that I say that is because the outcomes that it created in my life as a girl that was 20 years old, I was more concerned about the things that I had versus my inner peace and happiness.
Right. And so this is where I'm starting to be. So it gives people, these kids, even from 3 years old, a sense of themselves and a sense of being an empowered human being who's making a contribution and values themselves for themselves.
And like their own empowerment is them building their own self-belief and believing in their own capabilities. If I impede that, if I step in, then I'm actually inhibiting them from their own greatness. My kids fall, right? And I'm like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. So is there an underlying fear within me where if my child cries or they fall or they whatever, where I need to put a Band-Aid over that? Yeah, there was a lot of that in the beginning. And that's where I get into speaking with you about healing myself first, knowing I'm worthy as a mother first. I'm doing the very best I can, having compassion for myself first, loving myself first, instead of thinking that if I don't do this and my kids say, I hate you, I am a horrible person. And then that's when you walk on eggshells, right? That's when you start walking with you empower yourself as a role model and a leader and a parent first. Like I even remember with my boys, I'm like, I will not be bullied by another human being. I am not a concierge service, right? Like we are a team. There is a contribution that you have to bring to the table for us to be united. And all of it came from me being that little Lauren and knowing what worked and what didn't work. And that's where a lot of my foundational principles and what I'm bringing to the world, it's my story, And I want to just say, for all the people that have worked with me and, in my life, like, they're like, for the first time in my life, there's a leader, a thought leader, which is me, that doesn't shame people. Like, I am not the person that's like, I got it all together. I'm just providing a way that worked for me and how I saw individuals rise within an incubator of 14 years. That's literally what I'm sharing, psychologically, mentally, physically, my children, they fast, they water fast. Like they're so in tune with their body, and then they'll go and eat like this beautiful Chinese meal. Like we're traveling right now. Great. But they have the living principles to know, no, not going to have dessert today because I have the habits and I understand what it does to my body when I do these things. So isn't our job to raise, humans that can go off into the world and be a contribution and happy adults? Like to me, yeah.
Yeah. And I think what I'm getting from this conversation is reflecting real time as you're talking is that it perhaps is worth me asking the question, leading by example is one thing, but you've obviously taken that a step further and said, I'm not simply going to be the model that I want them to become. I'm going to proactively engage in their lives and have them develop themselves in the way that I'm developing myself, like as part of an overall system. So it's something like that.
Yeah. And also the thing is that like the essence of a system is like, I always talk about like the greatest professional sports team, Phil Jackson, Lakers. He came in with the Zen philosophy, right? He taught his players mindfulness. I teach my kids mindfulness. So no matter what, the players are adapting, like Charles Darwin says, it's not the ones that survive, it's the ones that are the most adaptable, right? So when you really look at it, if you're creating the example in your environment, right, and you're laying the path and the foundation for your children, automatically they're in that vibratory frequency.
Right. Yeah. So that I buy, but you're going a step further than that, right? Like
it's like,
you're like saying, okay, but here's a board and like do these things and we'll give you some celebration. But like you're taking it another step.
Well, and like, and a lot of it too is accountability, like accountability for what you're doing. And it's a framework. So it's establishing a framework. So that's the thing is like, when we travel, like the kids, they make their own boards in our hotel room. They love that. They love to see their progress. So over 30 days, they see how many habits they stacked and what they created in their life. And I love closing contracts. Like that's something for me where I get motivated by seeing what I'm doing in my life and habit stacking in a way. So essentially what the system is a habit stacking framework for a child to start to build and master these pillars of their lives in a gamified way.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a real, because I have my own habit stacking and I fill out and I've got my chart and and I'm tracking all of my good habits, but it never occurs to me. And then maybe it occurs to me, maybe my kids are like, maybe, not when they're 7, like maybe when they're a bit older, I could, maybe think, and like sometimes one of them will join me meditating and like, they'll like, you will do the barefoot thing or, but I'm never consciously like, okay, how do I create like great humans? Like I'm just going to be it's all like, can I be a great human? Like job one. But you're like, why can't we just all become great humans all together, all at the same time?
Well, and like the sense of empowerment, like, and I love that you're saying that because I'm inspiring, I'm activating a different way of thinking in you and you're activating a different way of thinking in me. And essentially, my greatest thing was like, how could I create children to be chief executive officers of their own life? And that started for me from 3 years old. Fully capable, 100%. And I mean, I have documentary of 13 years of us filming this. So are we disempowering our kids to believe that they're kids? So I talk about my language. When you say, hey, buddy, it's condescending. Hey, buddy, how are you? Right? Adults sit over here, kids sit over here. That was never me. I was like, you are a human just like me. You are here to teach me just as much as I'm here to teach you. Your contribution brings value to my life.
Right.
And my kids knew that from the day one. I never once said to them I was proud of them. I said, you inspire my life. So I come at it more from a human to human relationship and growth together versus this dogma of I'm the parent, you're the child. And I have more years on this planet, but who's not to say that they're an older soul than me?
Right.
And my son is, he's 11 now. He's seen multiple healers. I mean, my kids have been doing, healing work since they've been little. I mean, healers have worked with him and they're like, he is like a reincarnated Buddha. Like he would sit and meditate I was just with a friend she is one of the biggest crystal studios in the world. He sat in a chair and did not get up for 3 hours. He's 11 years old. So it's like, he's an older soul than me. He's teaching me, you know what I mean? So how am I programming his mind? And Bruce Lipton talks about this is you have 0 to 7 to imprint the subconscious mind of a child.
Okay, so there's 7. So I hope I've done a reasonable job. Yeah.
You're like, I need to get on this.
My immediate reaction is, oh, well, that's blown it then.
So you're literally wiring their brains. And if they're sponges and the neuroplasticity within their minds and we're wiring the programming, oh my God, let's give them the most amazing foundation of empowerment, intrinsic motivation, confidence, self-belief, listening, all of these things. So for me, I'm like, no, we're not going from good to great, like the book, Phil Knight. We're going from good to extraordinary. And that's my dedication to my children. is I want you to have the layup by the time you're, 10, 12, 13 years old, where society can come and infiltrate your consciousness. Social media, magazines, TV shows, music, all of this stuff. I wanted to create such a rock solid framework for my kids to know who they were and love themselves, that the external world could not hijack their brilliance and their uniqueness. And that was my contribution as a mother.
Wow. I mean, this really is extraordinary. I mean, it is making me look at parenting in a very different way. And it brings to mind something. I think wasn't it Thomas Jefferson was running his like a full estate at like 11 years old. I remember hearing that story and thinking how, but as you describe like in my your book, style of parenting, it makes sense.
This is the time to say that. I think like the majority, like my book is going to be released soon, but I did a deep dive on the most influential people in the world on the planet. And you're talking about like, Chanel, Bill Gates, like all different, diversity in terms of what are their gifts. Do you know that they all dropped out of school?
Yeah, no, I'd heard a similar system.
At 10 years old, they started building their own companies. At 10 years old, they were learning how to do all these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been indoctrinating our children in so many different ways where it's like, 6 hours behind a desk. Where's the sunlight? Where's the mud? For them to play, to learn who they are. Then I started to learn, okay, what are the most influential people? What are the billionaires doing? Oh my, they started learning these things at 10 years old. How to build a business, how to all of this. So that was a lot of my, my framework too, is I always like to study. I always say I'm a student, I'm never a master. And so I always love to study from the greats that have come before me. And the majority of them, this framework that I'm bringing forward today, this is the same framework that a lot of them have utilized. The capability, empowerment, step into their true power was, if you look at the Wright brothers, right? They created the airplane. Do you know that they were inspired just by seeing a bird? They were literally sitting on a hill watching birds fly by, and they were like, wait, we can invent this. Two brothers together. And it's like, that's this inspiration that I feel like can come through in our children if we allow them the space and the freedom to express in that way. And the path is the most essential thing to me, because mindset, I talk about life being mental. If your child has the appropriate mindset and it's been anchored in positivity and optimism, they are automatically going to see the world for them, not against them.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. And is there any, because here the devil's advocate is like, is there not any form of rebellion? Is there not a stage where they're like,
you want rebellion? Want rebellion? No. But like, that's the greatest thing is like, I allow my kids to make mistakes. I allow my kids to rebel, rebel in a good way, rebel with honor and respect. Like when I say my kid's name, they say, yes, mom. It's not what, it's yes, mom, right? There is definitely a discipline and a structure that I have embodied because I love myself and I am deserving of that respect. When I see children talk poorly to their parent, that's on the parent. That is not on the child. The parent must love themselves deeply enough to have boundaries with their child and speak from their heart. This is how I choose to be spoken to, with love, honor, and respect. Period. Right? Rebelling in my home would be a challenge. So mom, you think this way, I think this way. I'm going to challenge that. What are your thoughts around that? It's more of a collaboratory experience versus I'm going to rebel and not do this because I don't respect you. And then I'm like, that would never be existent in our family because there's such a deep honor and respect and a language of communication where we love each other so much and we honor each other. So I want my kids to challenge me. I've always said that, challenge this way of thinking, challenge what this is, and my, what I could tell you is my son's now 22.
Yeah.
He went to Syracuse University, which is a huge, it's almost like an Ivy League here in America, full ride scholarship for physics. He now got a job, right? He thinks that's what he wants to do, what the college is telling him to do. He called my husband and I the other day and he said, Mom and Dad, he goes, you guys have laid such a foundation in my life of positivity and love and joy. He goes, I don't care about the job. He goes, I just want to be around people that are joyful and love life. And he goes, if that means that I'm a server, I don't care. And it was like that moment where it clicked in his consciousness. Happiness is not what you do. It's who you are and your daily actions every single day around that. And he's 22. Imagine how many 40-year-old people are lost, in working a 9 to 5 and collecting a paycheck, but they're really not happy. I'm going to throw a statistic out there. 92% of this planet is unhappy. That means there's only 8% of people that are living their life purpose and are happy individuals and wake up every single day with joy. Wow. Study just came out. 92%, Richard. Yeah. So revolutionizing parenting is where we start. Why is that? Right. And so my biggest purpose is to bring this awareness to humanity and activate humanity in a new way of living and creating in their lives, just to think differently. Because if we see the frustration and anger and angst in the world today and the separation, what happened? Those people were babies at one point. Who raised them? What was the environment they were around? It's really reflecting on, what's prior, what needs to shift for us to see a more beautiful world.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, this is fantastic. It's so inspiring. This is really inspiring. And I'm interested, you said you don't speak to your parents, you haven't spoken to them for 8 years. What's been the reaction outside of your immediate family to this? Because I can imagine that's something people have to contend with.
Yeah. And this is where I get into crack the parenting code. So when I became a mother, I started realizing that I was robotically going through the motions because that was what I was. So for example, Thanksgiving, we all do a turkey and we all sit around and watch football. I didn't want to do that. I was like, I don't want to do this tradition. I don't really like this tradition. This has just been something that my parents or my family's really bought into. So I remember I have the baby Bjorn and I have a 1-year-old. My little ones are 15 months apart. They're literally like twins. And I told Brad, my husband, I was like, I want to invent our own traditions. I want to start my own life. I want to create the own trajectory of what aligns with me. And that was the moment that I realized the programs, the belief systems, the traditions, all of these things need attention from me. I need to look at, right? How I love myself. What are the things that I do in my spare time? How do I enjoy Christmas? Is that my tradition or is that my family's tradition? And so that was really when I started to have this awakening. But I don't believe you can have a relationship with people that listen to rap music and you listen to classical, or you listen to classical and they listen to rap music. It's a vibration and it's a frequency. It's a vibratory field. So with love and compassion, I'm so grateful for the people that brought me onto this planet. But at some sense in my life, I learned how to love myself so fully that I would not compromise the positivity and where I was going or anything other than that. And unfortunately, we didn't see eye to eye and the vibration was off. So I stepped fully into alignment with myself. And that's when the shift happened in my life, where I started to awaken to, you like to watch the news. I don't watch news. You know what I mean? I started to realize, what am I bringing into my vortex, into the vibratory frequency that I want to hold in my life so I can maintain this optimism? And it's been, 10 years and it's been a very challenging road because every, child wants their parent to love them. And I've just been different. They called me the black sheep when I was 2 years old. I always knew there was going to be a different way for me.
That says something
so you know about this, right? So isolation, I'm not like the rest of them. So I bought into that program. And now here I am today. No one gave me a handout. I created my entire life on my own, with my vigor, with my dedication, with my commitment, with my not giving up. So I will step fully into alignment with myself and know whether it's my family, whether it's business partners, whoever it is, no one will steal my joy. And that's the mantra. That is my mantra. So I love from a distance. I love with grace and compassion, but that doesn't mean that I have to compromise my values in my heart and my love, because there is something that is called family. Blood is thicker than water, all of these things. But I'm like, blood is thicker than water, but you didn't align with me adopting the boys. And you told me that you were going to love the babies that came out of my body different than you're going to love the boys that I adopted. Unfortunately, you're not going to see any of them. Right. So it's this old paradigm, and I had to create a boundary.
Yeah, you created a boundary, right? And that is so important, isn't it?
And I'm coming out like in the biggest way. So for all the listeners, like I'm sure you could feel my energy. I mean, I know what's ahead of me, and I know that the light is guiding me. I'm so protected because this is my mission and my life purpose is to empower humanity with this consciousness. And if it wasn't for my trials and tribulations, then I wouldn't be here today. And so that's where I find a lot of forgiveness and compassion, you know? So for whatever anybody's going through, just know like we want the challenges. We want the lessons. We want the obstacles. So then we learn how to pivot and cope and create our own story. That's why we're here.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So that's really interesting. So the first thing to say is even before we started, I could viscerally feel like your energy, right? And then that may sound like woo out there, but I really did. Like I feel like charged up. She's on something, right? And then you're talking about these boundaries, and so there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, boundaries really important, but is there not something about like almost like testing your strengths, right? Can you take some exposure to these and still stay positive? Do you ever feel like there's a part of you that wants to test yourself and like stir the pot a bit and see if you can maintain this in kind of any circumstance? Or are you more like, no, I don't need to be tested. I'm just going to put the boundary up and stay in, you know.
No. So I've tried. I've tried. There's been multiple, moments of me trying. I get emotional because I'm so grateful for life. Like, I believe that this life is the most magical gift. And am I going to spend the majority of my days trying to fix things?
Right.
Or am I going to spend the majority of my days creating my own footprints? And that's a choice that I made, because you can't take a horse to water and put their head down and dunk them in the water and say, drink my Kool-Aid, just drink my Kool-Aid, please, please, please. Or you got to do you, So the idea of me plugging into a vibration, and I have, and this is cross-pollinated across my whole entire life, which is, business, family, everything. I got to a point in my life, I'm 38 years old, where I said, there is a zero tolerance for negativity, zero tolerance.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years of me going back to the well, trying. And then I realized if I don't fill my own cup up, if I don't take care of myself, I've gone through so much, like whether that's C-sections and, I almost died having a baby, whether that's, multiple surgeries through the sports, no one can take your pain away.
Yeah.
No one can fix your problems. No one can fix what's going on in your mind. You have to take care of yourself first. And if that means you compromise relationships, then so be it. But I realized so much for myself, which was humans are always going to let you down. And it's in the Bible. Like that's what we're all here. It's spoken in word. If you don't take care of and love yourself, then that's where life gets hard. And so boundaries, to me, loving boundaries is essential, but it's also, do you want to be around those people every single day? And if the answer is, I'm not sure, I don't know, it's time to reevaluate how you want to create the footprint of your life. If you want to maintain peak performance, like even in business with my clients, you're talking about, I've been with billionaires. I've been with all of them. These are some of the most unhappy people. You could not pay me. I don't care if they're going to buy my company. I don't care anything. I walked out of meetings. I'll never forget New York City. I'm with a billionaire wanting to buy my company. His ego, his narcissism, all of these things. I cut the meeting. It was 5 minutes. And I said, thank you so much for your time. I said, we're not a good fit. I'm not going to bring that energy into my life over money or no way. And that's where you become so acute in your discernment, whether it's with your children, whether it's business, whether it's relationship with yourself. It's like, what do you give your power to? Your energy is your greatest currency.
Right.
How are you spending it?
Yeah. No, it's quite confronting in a way what you're saying, right? I'm just being open, but I totally appreciate it. Yeah.
And I like what you said. It really challenged me because, it's like the grass is always greener on the other side. You can run from your problems, but you can't run from your mind.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what you shared with me, but there also gets a point when are you exhausting yourself to a degree where you realize the relationship is what the relationship's going to be. And you got to be okay with that, and then make the choice of how you want to move through that.
Yeah. And there's a bit, I think, and as I sort of reflect again, it's like, there's a bit of ego in me. It's like, oh, I got through that interaction. I didn't get triggered, right? Like I stayed kind of positive.
Yes.
And so it became like a bit of an ego thing. Like I made it through the firefight.
Me. That was me. Everything's okay. Like wearing the mask, and that's the Crack the Parenting Code. This course that I'm launching is I was wearing this mask in multiple moments where I was like perfectionism, the pleaser, not wanting to do this, because once I stepped into my spirituality, I went from like 0 to 100. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. Oh my God. And I'm like, no, I could be badass and still be spiritual. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's where you find your own line of like, no, just because you're wearing, you don't have to wear mala beads and a white robe to be a spiritual badass, right? Like you have to step into your power and be like, I don't align with how you speak about yourself. I don't align with the way that you treat me. I don't align with all of those things. And that's when you learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
It's a vibratory field. So if you're walking into a place that's toxic, like I come home, I, do my whole thing. I Palo Santo, I sage, I do my affirmation. It's so much harder to get your energy back uplifted.
Yeah,
like those moments when you're just
no, I know, of course. But I it's just great for me to reflect on. I don't know if it's the martyr in me or there's something in me that maybe it's not loving myself enough or something that's like, I'm certainly not as strict as you are, in that area.
Well, and also like full disclosure, like I'm a human being, in this human experience. And I have these moments where I have cried, where it's been very challenging for me. But going through what I've gone through and the pain that I've gone through, I have to take care of myself first. Yeah. And that's literally my mantra is if I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm not showing up the way that I should be showing up to be in service to humanity. Because at some point, I'm going to be drained. At some point, I'm going to fall short, and my protective field around me, it's like every day my mantra is I have a golden bubble around me of light. That is my mantra. No one comes into my force field unless they are of the same vibration. And the reason being is because I have literally given my soul to others or, for business or for whatever. And it's all been take. And I talk this, there's two types of energies, investors and takers. People that invest, like me and you in this conversation, you're bringing me energy, I'm bringing you, or there's takers. And it's been very challenging for me to read the takers because they show up as investors. And I have gotten played on the highest level, whether that be new hires, whether that be my personal life. My husband always says, you're the easiest person to sell to because I take people's presentation, right? For what they're presenting themselves as. And then once I realized like energy doesn't lie, it's me, right? I need to be discerning. And that's where discernment right through the roof. Be discerning, Lauren. Watch, don't move into a contractual agreement. Watch them for a month, do a 30-day, see how they show up. Right? Like all of these types of things. Whereas before I'd be like, let's do the deal. Let's go. And then I get myself in trouble. So I think discernment is a good peak for us in this conversation. As you've asked me that, it's like being discerning of that relationship, that partnership, right? And not moving into it too quickly without being calculated and discerning what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose an overriding and discernment around what, and it's around energy. It's about, how is this interaction going to impact my energy? And it seems like this is really central, right? Well, this is central to your approach here. Yes, there are all the practices and the habits and so on. And it seems to me that a lot of this is about how to achieve an optional energy state. Is that right? Or to
Yes, I love that. Like optimal, like I always say, I talk about peak performance a lot. And peak performance isn't just about health. It's about the wealth of your mind, right? It has so many different variants. And so when I'm talking to children, it's like your life needs to be at a certain tension, or peak performance for you to feel optimized as an individual. If you wake up in the morning and you automatically go to your phone and you go to social media, there is a consequence to that. Your mind is now hijacked by the external world. So yes, we are talking peak performance. Lay your foundation first, my 16-year-old son. Get your gratitude in. That's a habit, right? Get your supplements in, have your green juice, purify your body with water, take a beautiful shower, purify your mindset, then go to your digital device. But don't let the digital device take you over first, because it's going to manipulate your mind. So if you don't anchor that in our kids, if we don't anchor that, this is why we have mental illness at an all-time high. I mean, if I told you the statistics on children right now, 1 in 4 children are obese, right? There's a major problem with our youth. And the reason being is the structure and foundation that we're laying as parents. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, plenty of interviews. They've said they have never given their child a digital device until one was 16 and one was 18. They know it manipulates the mind. So I'm talking about optimal performance for my kids, which is they know what phones are. They have computers. They have the whole thing. But I want to give them a framework where they can be discerning in their life to go, I will not, watch the stripper online that is blasting me with ads. They'll block the ad, so I've given them the framework. That's negative energy that's coming into your life. That's not going to bring you value. If you want to keep your vortex, your peak performance, make sure to block that type of consciousness out of your field. But it's giving them that as if you would give your friend or an adult, or it's teaching them those foundations, because, wherever your attention goes, your energy grows.
Yeah. And it's reminding
I've got a lot of stuff for you today, Richard.
No, it's all great. It's reminding me of the quote Nikola Tesla, right? If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy and vibration, right? And that's it. Pouring out.
36912. He talks about that. Like there's certain frequencies, 432 hertz. Like we have to reconnect to the very fabric of who we are as beings on this planet. And we've been so disconnected, I believe, because systems wanted to control us and manipulate us and keep us enslaved and entrapped in a consciousness. And if we wake up to a higher dimension of reality, which we are all doing, having these types of conversations, we're able to pass that on to our children.
Yeah. This it's been awesome. And we haven't really got into any of the practical stuff, but I feel like we've got to the heart of what you're saying here.
And I think that these types of conversations are so organic, and it's just such a beautiful way today, like us tapping into the real authentic truth of who we both are as human beings. This is my story. Everyone has their own story, but in reality, you're in service to me and I'm in service to you, and all the listeners are in service to us. We're all doing this together. And if we can help each other pull the rope and continue to pull the rope, I got a little bit on parenting. I cracked the code on a couple things here, right? Like, I don't want to pass that on to you, because I was the mom that was, on my knees, 4 kids, running a company. It's like, I am going to lose my mind. Absolutely lose my mind.
Yeah. It's almost like if I was, it's almost like the universe gave you like 4 kids and a massive business at 27 to force you
seriously
to think differently,
into
right?
this new way. Exactly. Like it was almost like, it was such an overload. I was at such a maximum capacity in a good way that it allowed me to think in a different way.
And it probably needed to give you that much before you reflected, given your capacity, right?
Totally. And anybody that knows me, like I am such a, I'm just like Cleopatra on her horse. Like you will not stop me. Like, it's like one of those things where it's like, I've caught a glimpse of consciousness. Right? I will study, like I read all the time. Like I want more. I'm thirsty for the wisdom. And so what you're doing on your pod and sharing these people that have this wisdom and passing it on is like the greatest contribution to humanity. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you for having me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and it's been confronting. Like I've been open with you because it's had me reflect on my own parenting, right? And
yes,
it's like, yeah.
Can I tell you something that's really interesting is every time I speak, when I speak or I'm, teaching or whatever, people have their own personal experience through the vibration of what I'm bringing. Like every single person will go, well, my kid's doing this, or what do I do here? It's almost like I'm just activating you in a way for you to catch my insight and then reflect on how you could use that in your life. It's been a very personal journey for me, because people literally take what I'm saying and they'll frame it in a way, well, this is happening in my life. What are your thoughts around this? So it's like a collaboratory energy exchange we're giving each other. That's been such a beautiful thing for me, where I'm sharing with you the truth, my truth.
Yeah. No,
and what's
absolutely.
set me free. And remember, I was the kid that was the naughty kid. I was the kid that was the black sheep. I was the kid. So learning from me, it's like, okay, I'm going to list, this lady is not a doctor. She's not a shrink. She's not a psychologist. She's a real mom that figured it out. And that's all I want people to know is I'm a real mom. You're a real dad. I don't need an accolade. I don't need a title. Right. And that's what the world needs right now is this authenticity to come forward. And that's why this is my dream, is to share this message with as many people as I can.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's great. And I think because of where you're at with your energy or something, I'm almost noticing my ego coming up and like, I'm noticing oh, Richard, you're doing this wrong. And God, I wish you were more like Lauren and, la, la, la.
Oh my God.
And like, but like real time, I'm like hearing it, let it go, listen to Lauren, right? Like, I think because you're creating that space.
The ego wants to keep you safe. So remember, the ego wants to keep you safe. So if the ego keeps you safe, then you're limited and controlled. It's once we open that door to, and I always talk about the monkey mind, because as I was processing this new belief system, that monkey mind was on point. Like, you're this, you're that, you're blah, blah. I had to stop, take my shoes off, get in the grass, right? Ground myself and be like, you are not in control. I am in control. Guess what? Joseph McClendon talks about it. The monster in our minds is really the ego. If we are able, right, to get a hold of that monster, he gets smaller and smaller. She gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So the ego is doing its job. It wants to keep us safe and protected, right? It's up to us to move through. And that's where we talk about Nikola Tesla, 3, 6, 9, 12. The majority of human beings aren't living at their maximum potential. We don't even know what manifestation is.
Right. Well, it just makes me think there's supposed to be this guy in India, right, who just manifests watches, right? Like, like instantly.
I've heard that people are in the Himalayas and they're like 330 years old and they're still in the physical body. But like so many of these experiences, I mean, I'm not sure if you know about Yogananda or any of the listeners.
I read his
he was out in Beverly Hills and his body was warm for a month. Like his organs were literally still, like he just vibrationally took his consciousness out of his body.
Wow.
I kind of want to do that sometimes, but I'm still trapped. Just kidding. I'm like, I'm done with this place. I love this conversation. I could talk to you forever. I hope the listeners are finding joy in this conversation as well.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I've loved it. It's been great. It's triggered me, like, as I said, ego-wise, but it's also just been awesome to viscerally. And then every time I kind of let go of that and then reconnect to the energy, it's just been great.
Yeah. And I think the thing is my energy is like, my energy doesn't lie. I'm a living demonstration of what's actually possible. And I think that's why my energy is probably coming at you in a way where it's electrifying you, because I'm not going to tell you to do something that I have not lived. And that's where I have so much conviction in the way that I speak and the confidence in the way that I move, because I've gone through the living experience myself.
Yeah. And it feels to me like you were catching into something very young. Like what you were reading and the questions you were asking yourself, from a young age is not typical, I would assert.
No, and I remember on a spiritual level, because I know there's a lot of spiritual, people on this call is like, on this podcast is, I always got these dreams of like, it's going to be okay. Hang on. Like it would be me running or me, whatever. And I was always confused because I was like, the dream state, like are these lucid dreams? Like, then I got really deep into dreams and I understood that the dreams are the voices and the messages that we need to tune into. And so, my knowledge of what I had as a child was really the imprint of my soul, that was speaking to me. Like, hang on, you're going to be able to redo this family thing. Just hold on. You're going through this experience for a reason. As many times as, I ran away from home, right? I did all the things that the normal teenagers do. But when we release the label, the terrible twos and the teenagers and all, that's a construct that keeps us limited. I was that kid. But if I would have been seen and heard, don't you think I would have showed up differently and not ran away? Probably.
Yeah. Well, what's a black sheep going to do other than
The Lachi's gonna run. I just wish I was a lion
pack, right?
because my legs, I didn't get too far. Yes. Well, what a joy.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your travels. I know you're making your way across the globe to Spain right now. So
Yep. And for anybody that's listening that's interested, I wanted to direct people to laurenmagers.com. So it's Magers, Magers, laurenmagers.com. I have my free ebook, which is the 8 Secrets to Being a Happy Parent. And that was literally, it's literally for everybody, but my team, they're like, Lauren, we'll start with parenting, but this is really universal, my entire system. So it's really for everybody, but it was the 8 secrets that I started on my journey with, right? Whether it's my mind pillar or, my body pillar. And I included a habit tracker there. So a 30-day habit tracker for people that would love to engage in this. And then my Crack the Parenting Code course, which is 3 modules, do it yourself, go at your own pace. I have my entire toolkit kit. I have like 3 books in there, my gratitude journal, my digital affirmation cards, my lifestyle recipes. I've fully loaded this thing because this is what's catapulted me on my journey. And it would be my greatest honor to share this with the humanity. So if you're interested, it's there for you as well.
Brilliant. And I know that we've been your team has given us a code, and so people.
Oh, good.
So we'll put all of that
in the show notes.
All of that into the show notes. Awesome.
Great.
Well, thanks once again, Lauren. This has been fantastic. I
Thank you so much for your
energy,
time.
like the demonstration of like having discernment around energy. You're a living just a living exhibit of
Thank you.
high energy living. So I've been really.
Thank you so much.